Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Susan Mertz. She is the Director of Horticulture out at Powell Gardens. And you don't become director out there just by happenstance. She has an enormous experience with all sorts of nurseries and landscapers and so on and so forth. A lot of practical experience. Then she also, at least used to be, a good flower photographer. She is also on the board of Gardeners Connect. And now she's here with you and us to lead us through Powell Gardens. And you know, that is a fantastic institution. I must say, when I came to Kansas City, 1986, 87, I had heard they have started a botanical garden. And I thought, oh my God, that's what they did 1800 or something like that. And here we have Powell Gardens, and it has evolved. And here comes Susan.
Thank you, Bibi. I'm gonna get plugged in here. Okay, so hopefully you can hear me. I started out at Powell Gardens just about 3 years ago. I was the interim director for about 6 months. And actually Tabitha, who's CEO of the gardens, had come to me. I'd gotten totally out of horticulture. I was like, I'm done after 20 something years. And I was working for a marketing company in town. I love doing websites, and I got into doing those when I worked for one of the wholesale nurseries. And anyway, she came to me and she said, Susan, we're going to be in between directors. Will you come work for us for about 6 months while we search for somebody? So I went to my bosses at my other job and I said, I'd like to do 2 part-time jobs for a while, and let's see how this works. Well, I got out to Powell Gardens, and it was so interesting. It was like all parts of my life came together at that moment and at that place. And it really felt like it was where I should be. So it's been quite a ride for 3 years. And actually, and following the legacy of Alan Branhagen, there was an interim period where Kun So Kim came in. He came from South Korea and the Samsung Gardens. So there was this interim period where he was out there, but Alan Branhagen had been there, you know, for a number of years and had really developed the gardens under, you know, his watchful eye and his style. Well, coming in, I've traveled around the country to a lot of different gardens, and it's been interesting being able now to kind of sculpt the gardens based on some other experiences I've had. So it's quite a moment in time, and I appreciate the opportunity. Okay, so currently our mission statement is to be an experience that embraces the Midwest spirit of place and inspires an appreciation for the importance of plants in our lives. And I show you that screen because we're going through a master plan process, and in a little bit I'll show you how it's evolving and kind of get your feedback on that. So really what we're doing is celebrating the seasons. And with the Midwest, we're so fortunate where we have the spring, summer, fall, winter. Although, you know, sometimes in May when it snows, we kind of have it all at once. But anyway, so our thing is really celebrating the spirits. So a little bit about our history. The Powell family, and I don't know if you know of Yellow Freight or if you're familiar with the Powell family, they started Powell Gardens. It was a family property, and then they donated it to the Kansas City Boy Scout Council. They ran it as a camp for a lot of years. And we still have buildings that on the property that were Boy Scout cabins back then. The Boy Scouts went back to the Powell family and said, we want to build a headquarters. And 435, there's the Boy Scout headquarters. Well, that's what they built. So the Powell family bought the property back, enabling them to build that facility. Powell Gardens originally went to Mizzou and was a part of their organization. They found that there are some challenges and limitations with that connection. So they went off on their own and have a board of directors. We currently have 20 on our board of directors. So our property, I don't know if everyone knows this, it's 970 acres. It's like a small town. We have 175 open to the public. And that's quite a footprint to have open and ready every day. It's made up of meadows and woodlands and native areas. But then we also have some of our formal spaces. And then we have greenhouse production, architecture on the property, and some art too. So this is a map of not the highway entrance, but then once you get more onto the property, it kind of shows the scope of it. It's quite a footprint, and it was designed, it's like everything is on spokes, and what you want to go to is at one end, and then maybe you want to try and figure out how to get to another end of the property. It's really kind of difficult for staff and difficult for visitors. There are some parts that work, and then there's some challenges. But first I'll talk about the garden teams. People ask how many people we have working in the horticulture team. And quite frankly, there's not enough. And thank goodness we have very dedicated volunteers. They really make a difference. So our visitor center team has 3 people. We've recently merged back our children's and Heartland Harvest Garden team so that we have 1 lead horticulturist, and I call them also garden managers. Then we have, so we have 4 on that group. Our core team are those areas like the highway entrance, gatehouse, fountain gardens, island, perennial gardens. Some of those more visited areas by our visitors, they have 8 people. They have the largest footprint, the most acreage that they cover. Conservation and natural resources, it has 1.5. We have an employee that spends half her time at Powell Gardens and then half her time's on a prairie. And I'll show you a picture and tell you about that prairie in a minute. Our mowing team, we have 2, plus some volunteers there. Production greenhouse is 3. We have 9 greenhouses. 3 are collection houses. And then the others are our actual production of plants. Kaufman Gardens is under our umbrella. That's our garden maintenance contract. So we have 3 staff there. And then Ona's Prairie. So Ona Geishen out in Sedalia, when she passed away, she was quite a donor and very involved with Powell Gardens. And when she passed away, she left a 40-acre plot. Next to it is a 40-acre timber. So we got both of them. And the prairie out there is pristine prairie, absolutely gorgeous. So through the trust that came with that property, we have Julie, who's our prairie plant specialist. She's out there half time, and then she's out at Powell half time. And then of course our volunteers. So some of our gardens, I've mentioned some of those already. I have to say one of mine favorite is the woodland and stream. I love the springtime, how it comes alive with the ephemerals and the spring bulbs. And then how just calming it is in the summertime. It's just a gorgeous space. Susan Lordy Marker, I don't know if you're familiar with her. Over at gift stores, you often see the angels that are the wood kind of carved figurines. That's her business. And she is a resident of the Kansas City area. She absolutely loves meadows and prairies and owns one of her own, but then also comes to us with that artistic experience. And I'll show a picture of that area in a second. Our conifer garden, we're so fortunate we had Marvin Snyder, who, if you are a gardener in Kansas City, have perhaps been to his property. And he recently passed away, 95. He had been in World War II in a Nazi POW camp. And it was actually Stalag 13, although he would tell you it's nothing like what they showed on TV. A couple of times he escaped. One time they had a German officer join him on the routes, and then they went back. Their job there as prisoners were to repair the railroad lines. And of course, you've got everybody bombing them, trying to destroy them. And he'd say, as the prisoners, they'd have to go out and repair them just good enough so, they wouldn't be killed. But of course, they didn't want it done too well, because they didn't want the Nazis to win. A fascinating man. And we're so fortunate our conifer garden came about because of him. So Ona's Prairie, that's a picture of it. It's truly beautiful. And it's incredible, the different plants that come and go through the seasons, the colonies of plants, and then also what comes and goes depending on how it's maintained. It has a really healthy mix of paintbrush. Don't know if you're familiar with that plant, but it's one that really grows best in disturbed soils. So when it's areas that have been mowed frequently, it has a higher population of paintbrush. Well, so now that the care of the prairie is changing this a little bit. That's one of the things I told Julie. I was like, oh my goodness, this is such a gift of nature. You know, we can't mess this up. So and we're so fortunate that Julie is so experienced with working with prairies, that she knows what she's doing. And so we're going to kind of see how it changes, how it gradually evolves. One of the first things she did was to go through and plat it out and do an inventory of the plants, and to do that every season. So now we know what's there, what the seeds are, and then also you learn about the insects. So then, like I had mentioned, we have Kaufman Memorial Garden. We are the garden maintenance contract for that property and have been since it opened. We also do some of the work over at the foundation. We've got some areas over there. So at Powell, we've got our 1.5 mile 1 mile family discovery trail, our 3.25 mile trail that is a little bit more rugged terrain. We have a meadow, a butterfly meadow, and the seed for that butterfly meadow came from Ona Geishen's prairie many years ago. We have the David T. Beals Woodland and Stream Garden. That's my favorite. And then, like I mentioned, the Susan Lordy Marker Native Garden. We have goats on the property. We've done this now 3 times. We actually rent them from Goats on the Go. And earlier this year, we had 55. And it's part of our meadow restoration project, where we go through cycles of having the goats out. We do a mowing and we do a burn. And depending on the year, we take different approaches. And we're improving the health of this one particular meadow. And what happened was, when they dug out the lake, they dug it all out. The top land ended up being the bottom of the meadow. They didn't take it and do it in layers and then put it back to the meadow in layers. So the plant health, soil health has never been good. It's never been what we want. What we're finding with the goats, they're really there because they like to eat the Sericea lespedeza. And that's a plant that the government decades ago recommended for ranches, cattle people, to have on their property as a good nutrition plant for the livestock. However, it's incredibly invasive and it's choking out the native plants. And what we're finding is that the goats eat it down to the ground, especially the baby goats. And then it allows the avenues for the beneficial native plants to come in. So what we're seeing is a better mix of native plants plus improved insect diversity. It's incredible how it goes together. And if you've seen the movie, The Biggest Little Farm, you really kind of learn about what happens when you kind of step back. You kind of nudge nature along, but you let nature do its thing. And that's what we're seeing with the meadow. So we have our more formal spaces too. And we have the fountain garden, the millstone fountain, the island garden rings are some of them. We're working on renovating the island garden. And it had really gotten out of control. So many things, weed seeds that blew in just took hold and were left to go. The pruning hadn't become the best. It had kind of let go. So we're renovating it. And the approach we're taking is that as you enter in from either side, one side's the meadow, the other side's the east lawn, that we're keeping it a little bit less formal. And then as you get to the island rings, that architecture is there that allows it to be a more formal space. And it's working. We have some work to do still, but we're getting it there. So our children's garden, this was an area that had kind of been neglected, kind of abandoned. And it was really nice. One of our employees came to me when I was still interim employee and said he wanted something different. He'd been with our growing operation, had been there about 13 or something years. And he said, you know, I've gone back to school to become a teacher. He said, I need to figure out if I'm here is the right place for me, or do I need to leave? I said, okay, tell me what you're looking for. And he said he really wanted his own garden space. And he's a very creative person. And I said, let's give this a try. And oh my goodness, he is this person that he will go out to, we call it a storage yard. Some people call it our dump, but you know, where we're storing things for someday. And he'll pull things from there and he'll paint them and he'll, anyway, put in some things. The kids are so engaged. So it's really flipped from being a place that people walked by to now you hear kids laughing and parents with them. So he's doing a really nice job there. So back over at the Island Garden, again, a more formal space. We're fortunate we can have tulips there. The deer haven't figured out how to get there. Even though they don't have to go over the 2 bridges, we've got a way by land that they can get to it, but they haven't figured it out. So we've been experimenting for a couple of years, and we're going to have hopefully a gorgeous tulip display this next year. They're planting hundreds and hundreds of tulip bulbs. Our fountain cascades, these have been fun to work with. They were originally, not certain why, but it was originally part of the Heartland Harvest Garden. It was with that team. So you might see corn or something growing here. And it was just a little too casual for such a gorgeous space. So we changed it to another garden team, and they've really elevated that appearance. And it's working. And this is a picture, Matt, who is our aquatic plant specialist. He did such a beautiful job with his annuals this year. The colors were just gorgeous. This is part of our family discovery trail, and we're partnering with Quixotic this year. The last 2 weekends in October, we are activating this 1-mile loop of the trail, and they're creating kind of a spooky, kind of mystical kind of experience. Where this tree arches over is the entrance to that trail. This is where we've got our American lotus, and the trail wraps around this area. We're going to activate this area next year. They really come on strong towards the end of July, kind of end of July. So we've purchased 3 docks to install and really invite people in here. What I have found is that every time a visitor complains about ticks, it's because they got off the path to try to get close to the lotus to take pictures. So we're going to put in docks. We're going to let them get there safely. No poison ivy, no ticks. Take their pictures. And then we'll have fewer complaints about ticks. That's my goal.
Ticks, yeah.
This is over in Woodland and Stream. And this is, like I had said, this garden is just incredible in the spring with the spring ephemerals, all the spring bulbs that have naturalized. The snowdrops, if you're familiar with snowdrops, oh my goodness, there's probably thousands of them that flower there. And the gentle breezes of spring, they just dance. It's just beautiful. Well, anyway, so come summertime, the garden kind of quieted down a little too much. And I challenged our garden team to say, what could we do? And they brought in some logs. They took some plants that were in our tropical collection house that nobody ever got to see and brought them out and put them in the garden. So we've got a number of spaces along in Woodland and Stream where we just elevate that experience. And what's so neat is that I'll go through the gardens and I won't have my name tag on and nobody knows who I am. And I listen to people as they're going through. And I've heard so many people say, I can do that at home. And that's a wonderful moment. We also have a secret trail in the Woodland and Stream. It's a little mulched path. And along the way, we added, you can maybe think of them like fairy houses or forest dwelling houses. And this is one of them. There's about 12 of them, all different shapes and sizes, looks. Some are hard to find, some are easier. But pretty cool thing. So there we've got some art. This is in the perennial garden, and that's the bear. And he was originally, if you read the description about him, he's supposed to be in that mixed hedge, evergreen hedge, that's junipers and arborvitae. However, this metal sculpture would heat up in the sun. The kids would climb on it. It was a bad thing. So we moved it over to a shady area, protected it from the kids. So it's in a good spot now. So over here, this is a picture of springtime with the daffodils. We have about 100,000 planted in the lawn. And when they come on towards the end of March, it's just beautiful. So this is Susan Lordy Marker, Native Garden. When she came on as a donor, she donated to our capital campaign fund, which is, significant level, and got to select a garden. And she selected the native garden. Well, it was a mess. It was just a wall of switchgrass and Indian grass and nothing inviting about it. So we collaborated with Scott Woodbury of the Shaw Nature Reserve, and then also Christopher Dabner of the Greensmen, to working with Susan and our staff to take a different approach and take those elements of design. It was fantastic to work with an artist and who said, let's look at contrasting line, foliage, form, texture, the different seasons of flowers. Incredible experience. And so then we wanted to figure out, how do we invite people in? So we put in a pathway. This garden is a really large space. Part of it's in the sun, part of it's in the shade under an oak tree. So we're really showcasing native plants of all different sites. So then people are invited to walk in, explore, see the the pollinators at work, and then think about what they want to try at home. So our conservatory is, one of the places where we showcase plants. And this was from our Festival of Butterflies. And Eric, who has the children's gardens and 2 houses, I'll show you in a minute, he did the mosaic, and he was so funny. He was like, is that just too childlike? Where are people going to think about it? And it was fun because I saw a lot of people taking pictures of it. And I was like, Eric, it worked, be proud, it worked. So our greenhouse production. So we grow for Kaufman Gardens. Also, we do annuals, perennials for Powell Gardens, the produce for the Heartland Harvest Garden, and donor plants, member plants, and then resale plants at our marketplace. So our architecture. I have heard that we have more buildings and structures designed by Ife Jones than any place. And if you're familiar with Crystal Bridges, is that it? In Arkansas, they've got the chapel that's a larger version of ours. But we're very fortunate to have these beautiful structures. And this is something that, I'm one that when I am out traveling and I see that there's a Frank Lloyd Wright house, I'll stop and see it. Well, Maurice, Ife Jones was a student of Frank Lloyd Wright, and you see that influence in his buildings. So this is something that we're really trying to point out, that come to Powell and see some pretty special architecture. So our collections. We're doing a much better job with our collections and really getting the word out there about them. Our magnolias, for a number of years, and this was through Alan Brandhagen, became certified by the American Public Gardens Association. And we have an extraordinary collection of them. Our conifers, thanks to, like I said, Marvin Snyder, those are certified as a reference garden by the American Conifer Society. And just this past year, we got both of our aquatic plant collections and our fern collections recognized. And that was quite an undertaking. I was so proud of Matt, who had the aquatic collection. He's a very shy person. And to take on that challenge of, putting himself out there and doing all the work that it required to get that collection recognized was really quite a feat. So then we have our additional collections. And we now have collection meetings where we've got staff that have taken on specific plant groups. And we're really working on curating our collections. And what's the quality? What are we missing? So these are a few of them. Dr. Norland Henderson, the Bearded Iris collection, he was one who went out to Powell over and over again. And we had a collection, it was originally over by our old visitor center, up on a hill. It was not accessible for anybody with a walker, wheelchair, anything like that. So staff came to me a couple of years ago and said, we want to put it in a better place. So we took a couple of areas of the fountain garden where they had insectary beds. That's what they called them. It's kind of a mix of native plants and not very well curated. A lot of things had just kind of receded. So anyway, we dug it out and put in his bearded iris collection there. And so now our visitors, whatever their way of mobility, can see them. So now we're sharing our collection online through Garden Explorer. We're very fortunate we got a grant a year ago that allowed us to invest in the software program Iris VG, plus get an engraver and have staff time to implement it. So our collection of plants is now available online, and you can search by common name or scientific name. You get to it through powellgardens.org. Click on gardens, and then you'll see a place to explore our collections. In our next step, we've got a volunteer who's taking pictures of everything. So then that next step will be uploading the images too. So some places that our visitors, in addition to seeing our plants in the gardens, they can see them in some other spots too. And Eric, the one I talked about, children's garden, tropical and succulent collection houses is ones that he came to me and said he wanted to take those on. They're right by our Heartland Harvest Garden. And he just has done a fantastic job. And I wish that image up there at the top was better. He got tired of looking at the concrete walls and said he wanted to build boxes and do succulent gardens. So there are 4 of those panels. They took cuttings from plants and collections, did different designs, and they're just stunning. So that's what the house looks like then, more in the middle part of it. He gets bored with things, so he changes it out often, which is wonderful. And so then the tropical house, that's how it was set up for spring. He wanted a more fragrant collection. Right now it's finishing up for fall, where he had corn and giant pumpkin growing in it. So then for wintertime, for Festival of Lights, it's going to be where we have our hot chocolate bar. And he's going to have a poinsettia tree in one place, dichondra streaming down walls, Lysimachia balls hanging from the ceiling. So we'll see how it comes together. But I love his creativity. He's one that I just stay out of his way and just let him do his thing. And every now and then go, okay, maybe change this a bit. But like I said, just stay out of his way and let him be creative. So our orchids. Brent, who has our visitor center gardens, he's the lead horticulturist there. My first day at work, he came to me and he said, I want to do an orchid show. And I said, okay, let me get my feet on the ground. Let me figure out how this place works. So we're doing an orchid delirium in March 2022. And it's going to be an exhibition. So not a show, but an exhibition of orchids and companion plants. So we're working with David Bird. If you're a plant person, you know about Bird's Botanical Gardens. He has been kind of our shopper for us to help build up our orchid collection. So it's going to be hopefully amazing. And then we have our conservatory displays, and that's where Orchid Delirium will be. Everything will be emptied out. We're going to bring in, this is our plan, trees with the bare branches and fill it with those with orchids in the nooks and crannies, and then the companion plants around. So we'll see how it comes together, but that's our plan. This was our conservatory during Bloomfest this year. And we've got Peregrine Honig, who's going to be our guest designer for next year. So next year it's going to be a little bit racy, and opening night it's going to be a VIP event. She's actually going to have some models in there. I think they're going to be lightly clothed, but I'm not certain, and artist painting. So it could be quite an event. So other times to see how the conservatory changes out is Festival of Butterflies and Festival of Lights. This year for Festival of Lights, it'll be the Tiki Bar. And so we'll have poinsettias in there, but it's not going to be the traditional display. And it's going to have a lot of tropical plants too. So for about a year now, we've been working on the master plan. And this was an incredible process of bringing in, we started with a review of about 7 different companies who submitted proposals for it. Got it down to 2 that we did major interviews with, and then down to the 1 design workshop. And so I'll show you what this thing is like. It is over 100 something pages. It went into everything with, if we do this, it will build our membership this much. If we do this, it will build attendance. It will build revenue streams. It looked at all parts of the gardens, looking to see how we could activate things. And so our mission evolved. And so now it's be an inspired experience that elevates the Midwest spirit of place and reveals the importance of nature in our lives through discovery, education, interpretation, and conservation. So although I've had some horticulture staff who've been like, wait, what happened to plants? We're not pointing out plants anymore. Well, yes, that's part of our story. It's part of nature. And our site is so much more with 970 acres, so much more than the gardens too, but we're still telling the story of the plants. So some of our challenges at Powell, the large footprint, circulation, like I said, trying to get from one part of the garden to another. Accessibility, it was not built for ADA kind of rules, when we've got to work through that. Sustainability, you know, when you've got a perennial garden that's 4 acres and was built for 3 full-time staff and you can't afford the 3 full-time staff, that's a sustainability issue. And we've got to figure out how to make some changes. Our infrastructure, wayfinding. Oh my goodness. There are so many times I'm out in the garden, somebody asks me how you get somewhere. So we've got to improve on that. And then donor recognition. We have everything from flower pots to buildings to bricks, benches with donor names on them. We need one place. So this process allowed us to explore the possibilities. They came back to us with about 35 ideas, and not all of those are good for Powell Gardens. Our next step, we have a workshop with the board tomorrow. And like I said, it's 20 members. And we're going to take the ideas, and we're kind of the Powell Gardens director level team. We're going to be there and kind of guide them through the process. Kind of say, this is what we think is going to work, but of course, get their input too. So going back to the map, there's some opportunity. For instance, 12, which is down there in the corner, lower part, F12, that's the perennial garden. Well, it's got way too many routes through it. Those are all paver bricks. The weeds grow up through the paver bricks. Nothing works for a wheelchair, but it's a wedding spot. So how do we make this work? And how do we take that down from 3 full-time staff to 1 plus the team and plus the donors? Then also, how do we connect from F, that's right there by 12, over there by 13? How do we get people down to the water and across? So do we build a boardwalk? Over there, over by A, that's the children's garden. But what could we do as a children's garden? Could it be a discovery garden? What could we do? We know that Heartland Harvest Garden, that's about 12 acres, and when it was originally built, had 11,000 varieties of plants. We know that doesn't work. So how do we get there? Anyway, it's been an incredible process. And it's really given us this opportunity to think outside the box. And I don't like using that phrase, but really we have. We're really taking a different approach. We don't have to take ownership and go, wait, this has never worked, but we're going to keep doing it. Let's do something different. So regenerative agriculture. So the Heartland Harvest Garden was really important those years when it came online, because that was at the start of the farm to table movement. But now let's talk regenerative agriculture. That's the goats, that's cattle, that's different ways of taking care of your property. And we could be a showcase for that story by working with some different collaborators. The perennial garden, instead of being a perennial garden, it could be a wedding walk. So now we take it down to one pathway, we landscape, do perennials and shrubs on that pathway, but then we let the rest of it go to turf. We have the staff that we could do that. The discovery garden, I talked about that. Instead of the children's garden, take it to a whole different level. A tree canopy. Think about walking out there among the tops of the trees. That could be pretty amazing. We've had a group come to us about glamping. We could do overnight glamping. Why not? Build an area. There's crop art. So forts. We're going to do a thing called Fortopia next year. And it's following what has been done at another garden where they call it Fortlandia. And they've been so generous to share all their information and say, give this a try. So we're going to be working with designers who are going to design forts that are interactive for children. And our goal is 8 to 10 of them, and to put these in next year. And then what do we do with that 970 acres? Could we do a mountain bike trail? Could we do a zip line? I don't know. We'll see. And maybe that's not right for Powell Gardens, but it's fun to have the opportunities to think about. So then also part of the master plan process was really talking about our partners and our partners in the organization, in the community. And of course, higher education, art, environment, community. We're really looking at those importance of partners. And that's something that we really, although some had been in place for a number of years, we really started it this past year. And so the Kansas City Ballet, they've come out a couple of times to perform. One was at Festival of Lights, another time was during Bloomfest. We've had the Lyric Opera out. We're collaborating with the Nelson Atkins Museum on taking works of art in the gallery and then interpreting them with plants. We did that during Bloomfest, and we have plans to do more of that. Quixotic, we have a number of things we're working with them on. Missouri Department of Conservation, Missouri Prairie Foundation are really important with what we're doing and helping us with managing our land. Lincoln University, we have finalized an agreement with them and have a native plant program. That's our first step, is to put that on with Dr. Nadia. But we have more that we can do. And if we're thinking about a regenerative agriculture movement, there's that opportunity. Their goal, Mizzou is a land grant university, and their goal are the larger institutions. But Lincoln University is also a land grant university, and theirs are the smaller communities. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to connect with that group. Audubon Ranching, we're working with them. And at some point, we're going to have cattle out grazing on the land. And I think it's going to be great because I have less that I have to worry about mowing. But so what their story, the educational message that they're going to be sharing is what happens when you bring on the cattle to graze on land. What happens then with the bird community? Then the songbirds show up. And so they've got a message there that they want to share. Of course, Missouri Botanical Garden has been a great partner. We work with the local school districts, bringing out students, and we've got a course called Plants Matter to reach them. And harvesters, we grow all this produce, then what? And so we do donate it to the community. So now, bringing together our community, the partners, activating our curated collections, while embracing the Midwestern spirit of place. This is where we are for 2022. So we have these different opportunities where it's really nice to be a garden. And I've had some staff go, it's easier to garden when there's not people here. Well, it's harder to keep the doors open when there's not people there. And really, isn't that what we're meant to do, is to bring people in and share the plants with them. And so we've got Orchid Delirium, Fortopia, Festival of Butterflies, Festival of Lights. We've got the Painted Garden, our spring one. Okay, Garden Follies. We have the French word for it. I could not remember what it was. It's been in an email going back and forth, so I just called it Garden Follies. Thank you. Yes. That's going to be June 24th through 26th. It's going to be a walk through our island garden and woodland and stream garden. With Quixotic is going to be our production company, but not necessarily performing. So it's an opportunity to bring in, it could be somebody reading poetry. It could be somebody playing the harp, a group singing, a bell choir. So different spots along the way with food and wine and the arts. And then Dark Forest also. So that tells a little bit about Dark Forest. Tickets are on sale. We've already sold over half of what our goal was, so we're pretty excited about that. And then Festival of Lights. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions or any experiences you'd like to share about Powell Gardens, or even another garden that you've seen and you go, you need to try this? Yes.
So, full disclosure, I am a Botanical Garden nut.
Oh, good.
And I've been to lots of different, in the UK and Ireland and Wales. I've been to all of the national botanic gardens there, but also I love Powell Gardens, and I've been a member since I moved to the city.
Okay.
But 1 year, and I don't get there very often because it's a schlep.
It is.
I also spent a year on crutches and in a wheelchair, and it was virtually impossible for me to actually enjoy the garden places.
Right.
But 1 year in, and it was like the end of May, beginning of June, somebody decided to plant artichokes
Yes.
everywhere, and they were all blooming at the same time, and it was the most spectacular thing. I took hundreds of pictures of artichokes, and I thought, do this in my garden?
Yeah.
Is it possible to do in my garden? I don't want to eat them. I just want to grow them and watch them bloom because it was so gorgeous. And I think it was the only.
You want to do a horticulture kind.
So it's funny that you say that, because Eric, who's taken on the Heartland Harvest Garden, we have an area that's a cut flower garden, and we've got some complications with it. He said he wants to do more of a homeowner's garden, and he mentioned artichokes.
It was amazing.
They are sculpturally beautiful.
They're so gorgeous.
Yes.
And the same year, we had like a basil hedge in the apartment.
Nice.
It was just like multiple different colors of basil and Texas, all sort of, and that were all kind of either trained or created some way. And that also. Oh, I do that.
I'll tell him about that too, that we want a basil hedge with those artichokes.
It smelled glorious.
Oh, I bet.
And the artichokes smelled glorious.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite garden in the United States?
In the US, it's actually in Canada.
Oh, which one?
The Botanical Garden that's by Niagara Falls.
Oh, I haven't been there.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Okay.
And you have this beautiful view of the falls. It's in sort of midway between that town is on the other side of Niagara Lake.
Okay.
And it's all along. There's walking paths all along the falls. It's a there for up there, and they have a beautiful small botanic garden.
Okay. My favorite one is Chanticleer in, Delaware, Philadelphia area.
Yes, and
I love that garden.
Longwood.
What? But who can achieve Longwood?
I know.
I think that's.
Botanic Gardens, because I'm from New York City.
Oh.
Botanic Gardens is glorious, and I also
Okay.
bookbinding because they have an amazing library and conservation department.
Yes. We had plans when we were in New York to go to Bronx Botanical, but it rained, so we went back a second day to the Met.
There you go.
Metropolitan. Yeah.
Yeah,
but-
that is also a schlep.
Okay.
Okay, but I think we all will go to Powell Garden after this presentation at least 6 times to see all the changes that they come up with. And
Thank you.
having followed it almost from day one, I must say it is spectacular, and it is my favorite garden.
Thank you, BB. It is my favorite, but yeah. But it's so fun to visit the other gardens and to get ideas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to Dallas Arboretum Thursday. We're going to, a group of us from work are going
Oh,
to see that one. So, yes.
other questions?
Yes.
So with your master plan,
Mhm.
what time period is that for?
Right. So we have some things that we've already implementing right off the bat, we're like, we're doing this. And then we have some that are going to fall in a 1 to 3 year range, 3 to 5. There could be some that we just don't even do. We'll see. I'll know more tomorrow after the 4-hour workshop. Yes, but that's kind of what we're thinking, is that right away, there are so many things that we can do to build on what we're doing. And so that will be our first steps. And then, of course, then identify a couple of major things and start the fundraising for those.
Completely separate. I just listened to a podcast that Guts to Go.
Yes.
And just fascinating what
Yeah.
they're dealing with.
Right. They even like poison ivy. Yeah. It's a wonderful way of tackling these problem plants without chemicals. Yeah.
Are you in contact with the Land Institute, even if that's Kansas?
I know it's on Julie's list, but Julie's only been with us a year. So I haven't, I don't want to push too hard on
Yeah,
everyone
but
she's
they're doing
contacted.
Really interesting things you can listen to.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to make one remark. I live about 150 yards away where Marvin Schneider lived. And I recently, because of the HOA, found out that he had deceased
Yeah.
about 2 weeks after he paid his dues. But I was amazed how much there is still in his garden, despite
Yes.
the fact that the very unique pieces
Mhm.
went over to Powell Gardens.
Well, so we got quite a few things from the Linda Hall Library. When they expanded, the conifer garden was in the way. So we got a lot of pieces from there. And then he went shopping around the United States for Powell Gardens. And that's how I met him, was when I was working at a wholesale nursery. He would come in and I'd go out and show him the different conifers that we had. So that's where we became friends, was many years ago. But then he was an avid collector and always every year had more plants coming in. And he had a gardener, her name's Kim, who would come up and stay with him. She lived Sedalia, Columbia or something. And she would come up and spend weekends there and work in his garden to keep it going. So now has the property sold?
Oh, yes. And there's a young couple in there now.
Are they respecting what they?
So far, I don't
Okay.
see them destroying things.
Okay, good. Because so
But if you
it's an incredible house.
if you want contact
Yeah.
information about the people that live now there, that may be worthwhile.
I would like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Not to be nosy. I don't want to,
No, but
but I would love,
identify you to them. So that
yes,
maybe
right. And if they're not the conifer experts, they could work with Marissa, who's at our garden, who could help them.
Okay.
That would be wonderful. Have you ever been in the house?
No.
Oh, you guys? Yeah.
I've been in the house and toured the garden several times. It's
Yeah.
just astonishing.
It is.
And the new owners, if they could know, maybe they already know what they have bought.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, it's a treasure.
it is. Well, in the house, it's a mid-century modern that he designed. Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Like even the built-in, all the built-in cupboards and everything.
it's sold in a flat.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.